every bookish content creator's favorite time of year. It's mid-year freakout tag time. Starting with question number 1, what's the best book you've read so far? I've really had an amazing reading year with so many 5-star reads, and maybe it's recency bias, but I'm gonna have to say The Unworthy by Augustina Badarista. I know it's like sort of a controversial pick. It seems like a lot of people were not huge fans of this. Personally, love the language, love the epistolary style of storytelling going on here, love the way that we took what is best in both like the cult and the post-apocalyptic dystopian sort of narrative and really magnified and honed in on it for this story. I think it's beautifully written, it's haunting, it's compelling, and that's kind of what you want in like a horror read that's sort of exploring something on a slightly deeper level. Number 2, best sequel you've read so far, gonna be the Firebird series. I read books 1 to 5 this year, and it's an amazing series. I think all of these books are 5-star reads. I'm gonna be struggling when I do my June reading tier wrap up to pick out a worst book of the series. Number 3, new releases you haven't read yet but want to. I have a couple this year. It's going to start with Vanishing Daughters by Cynthia Palaio. I read her last release, Forgotten Sisters, last year, and it was one of my favorite books of the year. If you love goth, if you love lyrical prose, if you love that element of totality where everything is driving and pushing you to the same conclusion, especially when there are so many disparate threads that you're not 100% how they're going to tie in, but you know what's coming, this is definitely the kind of story for you. And this book is going to take me back into that sort of like dreamy gothic Chicago haunted house kind of era, just like Forgotten Sisters. Only instead of having like a sister relationship to focus on, I think it's going to be a mother-daughter relationship. And where Forgotten Sisters was kind of long, a little bit meandering, I think the pacing here might be a little bit better for most people because it's supposed to be a thriller novel. Main character is sort of like connected to this serial killer. I'm curious to see the execution on this versus the execution on Forgotten Sisters because there's a lot of overlapping elements in it. But I loved pretty much everything about Forgotten Sisters, and it's one of those stories that kind of haunted me for a few months after reading it. So I just think Vanishing Daughter is a must read this year. Paulette Kennedy also came out with a new book this year, and I want to read that one too because I loved her Devil and Mrs. Davenport that I read last year. This is like a gothic dream of a story. This new one is The Artist of Blackberry Grange, set in the 1920s, which is one of my favorite historical time periods because I love spiritualist movements and creepy haunting stuff from that time period. We're focusing in on a lady who's a painter who's sort of being like compelled to paint these creepy supernatural style paintings. I'm really curious to know more about the art. I love things that delve into like a specific artist and their craft. I like creepy paintings. It's very like H.P. Lovecraft, but also it's giving me like some strong Dorian Gray vibes, and I just think all that stuff sounds like a really fun time. And then lastly, I'm kind of curious about the new Rachel Gillig story. That's sort of like a stretch goal because I read One Dark Window, but I still need to read Twisted Crowns to see if I even like the first duology by her. Number 4, most anticipated release for the back half of the year, The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreo Garcia. The Women in Horror Book Group is planning to read this one, and I'm really excited to read it with them. Even if they weren't planning to read it, I really just love Sylvia Moreo Garcia. Everything I've read of hers has always been a banger. Number 5 is going to be your biggest disappointment so far. Probably Ember by Claire Kent. I discovered this Kindled series last year and mentioned it I think in last year's mid-year freakout. It was a new genre to me to be in a post-apocalyptic romance sort of thing. Found it really like wholesome and heartwarming. Throughout the stories I read, there was this one couple, Rachel and Cole, who I really wanted to know more about and really wanted to get to their romance. So when I read it this year and it was awful, there's just like this creepy element of like the adult ass man checking out a minor and like sort of lying in wait not only for the son to die but also for her to come of age, so it's like okay, even though we're in a post-apocalyptic world, so I guess there are no rules about that anymore. It just feels so predatory. I don't think I can like overlook it. Number 6 is gonna be biggest surprises. I mean, there have been a lot of surprises for me this year. I think the fact that I only found Siren Queen and Hungerstone to be mid-tier was a really big surprise to me. Not that either of these books were bad. They both execute on a very high level. If you told me they were favorite reads of the year for you, I would understand why. They just had elements in them that didn't work out for me personally. I think the biggest positive surprise was me loving The Unworthy to a certain degree because this author wrote well enough in Tender is the Flesh, and Tender in the Flesh was such a knockout hit for most people. I almost felt like obligated to read this follow-up, especially because The Unworthy takes place in the apocalypse and in a cult, and both of those things are like exactly what I like to read. But because I didn't like Tender is the Flesh, I sort of had pretty low expectations and sort of like was prepared to be disappointed. And it turns out that I am the main booktuber that loves this on this platform. I don't think anyone likes it as much as I like it. You know? And then as far as like just completely out of left field surprises, I would say The Haunting of Room 904 and Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang. I went into both of these books with no idea that they were coming out, no idea what they were about. Immediately from page one, loving them and knowing that this was 100% my thing and my vibe and being very excited to get more from them. Number 7, my favorite new to me author. I've got 2 here. Kylie Lee Baker with Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang, and then Tana Reeve Dew with The Good House. And I really want to get to the Reformatory this year too, just to continue my Tana Reeve Dew experience. Number 8, newest fictional crush. And as you guys know, I don't really do fictional crushes as a rule, but if I were going to pick anyone, it would actually be Pallas out of the Firebird series. And this is because he is so reminiscent to me of like the Landau from Escaflowne. And I've got a thing for like a tortured bad guy who's ultra violent, on the wrong side of things, but secretly like ready to come over to the right side or like work through their trauma to be the good guy after all. I understand this is a deeply problematic trope, and it's not something I'd look for in real life. In my defense, when I like these characters, they are not the main character. They're like a far-flung side character, and I'm doing a lot of mental heavy lifting and projection, both of like what happened to them, how it impacted them, how they're acting now, what went into their secret like turnabout. And also, I just really love the trope of like biting the hand that feeds you, and in this case, like the violent, awful, ultra like bad thing that this guy's like the general for. He turns around and gets them and helps defeat them. So I love that. And I love a redemption story, which obviously is part of what goes on there. And the fact that like both DeLandau and in this case Pallas have been like tortured a lot and sort of conditioned to act this way. It's like them breaking their programming, working through their trauma and healing. Like it doesn't make everything they've done up to this point right, but I like that moment. And I like that then they turn around and start working for the good guys or start like coming to some kind of understanding with them. And through that understanding, through that work there, they're finding like their own path to redemption and perhaps a path where these good people can forgive them. Rolling me into number 9, newest favorite character. It's gotta be Kira from the Firebird series. I just think she's amazing. She's so much fun to read. I think she's got a great balance. She's very earnest, which I love in my characters. She has a rocky backstory. She sort of starts herself off as an underdog and through like a series of different challenges, trials, and struggles has like come out to be a major force to reckon with. And two, she has always been focused on like forming alliances, bridge building, making people come together to stand up against this bad thing out here. And she even is like cool with becoming allies with old enemies and stuff. But she doesn't just like immediately flip on a dime. She gets introduced to the idea that maybe this person she thinks is her enemy is actually her ally, and like slowly comes around to that idea and slowly comes around to the idea of helping them and joining forces with them too and kind of like bringing them into her alliance. All of this is really cool. I think she's just uplifting. She's legitimately fun to watch. She's surrounded by an amazing cast of characters. The author did a great job making her powerful and interesting and engaging, but also avoiding the trap of making her like the chosen one or the special. I'm really excited to see where she goes in book 6, and I think probably book 7 too. We don't know how many there will be in the series, and we don't know when 6 is coming out, but I am there when it happens. moments. Number 10 is books that made you cry, and then in parentheses, or the saddest book you've read. I do cry really easily. Usually it's not because they've made me sad so much as because the book has like hurt me or hurt characters that I care about. And I'm an empathetic crier. I'm also an angry crier, so that's a whole different thing. There are a ton of books though that have made me feel that way this year. I'm just gonna list them off. In Different Stories Above, this is a non-fiction story about the Donner Party. Considering that the Donner Party resorts to cannibalism to survive, I think it's sort of self-explanatory why there might be many aspects of that would make me cry. The Good House by Tanner Reeve Dew. This starts off hard, and I started crying probably in chapter 1, and there were different various places after that too, where it was just intense and painful and gut-wrenching on like a basic human level. Trail of Lightning, I think there are several moments in that book where I teared up a little bit. This is not as intense as The Good House, but there definitely has its moments where you just feel for the main character and feel for what she's like going through. When Women Were Dragons, this has so many parts where I cried, and like where I was crying for chapters while reading. This book, I think ultimately is uplifting and happy, but there are so many parts that are the lowest they've ever been and you don't think they can go any lower, and then it gets worse. The Haunting of Room 904, as this deals with self-harm, suicide, someone who gains power through a tragic, traumatic situation, dealing with ghosts, which all come about because of horrendous things that happen to them in their lives as they died. Like, obviously there are several parts that made me tear up a little bit. The Butterfly Garden, I didn't plan to cry in this reread, but there are some things that are just phrased in such a way and that are so sad. I couldn't, a couple tears here and there. Not many, but enough that it counts. Deluge by Charmaine Wilkerson. I was crying through a lot of this story. This one was rough. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, just a couple spots here and there. Mother Country by Etaf Rum. This is another one I think I was crying through almost the whole time I was reading it. There's a lot of beauty in it, but there's also just a lot of pain. A Planned Occasion. This one, even when I was talking about it in the review, there were parts of it that made me cry. And like, you don't see those in the video. I cut around them and like give myself some time to feel a different way. There are certain issues that even though they don't necessarily personally touch on my life, they touch on enough people's lives that I've known and been friendly with, that there's just like this empathetic pain. Even thinking about the possibility of those situations makes me close to tears. And in this one, they're talking about a stillbirth, miscarriage, early birth kind of scenario. How that shaped her life, how she's coming to terms with it now in her old age through like a surprised kind of way was both beautiful, and how poorly society as a whole has created like appropriate mourning rituals or like an appropriate understanding and sympathy for people who are experiencing any of those kinds of traumas. Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang. That chapter 1 had me crying, but in the back third were some other things I just did not expect to happen happened. I was crying again. This book did really well making you love the characters and identify with them right away. So when things happen to them, sometimes you're cheering and you're laughing with them. There's a lot that's funny in this book. Also, when the bad shit is happening or when they're talking about things that happened to them in the past that have like sort of left them misfits and like struggling to integrate to normal society, you also kind of feel a way about that. The Unworthy, obviously a story about cults that are abusive, made me cry. I don't see how that would be surprising. And then Siren Queen by Ni Vo. Even though I didn't love this book, there were several spots that were really beautifully written and executed and that made me feel very intensely for the characters. And in those areas, sometimes the scene was poignant enough that there was crying going on. Number 12, books that made you happy. Again, this has been a great reading year for me, so there are quite a few of them. The Good House by Tanner Reeve Dew. As much as this made me cry, it also made me happy at the end. Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. I think the ending of this is quite triumphant. Rules of Redemption and the whole Firebird series by T.A. White. For me, this was just like a happy, feel-good story beginning to end. There were certainly moments where it was like intense and there was a lot of tension and uncertainty. I think there were probably times I teared up during it. For the most part, I just remember feeling like happy and addicted and really connected to like all of the characters and everything that was happening. When Women Were Dragons, like I said, the ending of this is so uplifting. There were times that made me cry for chapters and chapters, and in fact sometimes I even had to put the book down and like walk away from it for a little while. But I think this like back 25% maybe just felt so good, so heartwarming, so like accepting, yes, and transformative, that on that level it was really hopeful and beautiful. The Knight and the Butcher Bird by Alex E. Harrow. I like transformation and transformative stories. This one sort of has that going for it. I don't want to talk about it too much because it's short and easily spoiled. Fated Blades by Ilorna Andrews. This one is kind of like happy thriller, sci-fi, fantasy, sort of quippy back and forth. It's got like that quick snappy dialogue, quick snappy action. For me it was like a fun lighthearted romp, sort of like feel good the whole time. The Haunting of Room 904, again, even though there were elements that were very intense and sad, I think the ending is triumphant and like a great release that leaves you like in a happy, better place. And the same with Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang. It's so intense and so sorrowful. Like this is definitely one that made me cry a lot in certain chapters and certain points, but even though the lows are real low, the highs are really high. I don't think it 100% pulls off the ending as well as something like The Good House or The Haunting of Room 904. Both of those are definitely like more happy, but the way that it transforms and reconnects and like shows the moving on process after loss, I think is all really inspiring and like sort of feel good. Number 12, your favorite film or TV adaptation of the year. I've only watched 2 TV adaptation shows. One is going to be season 2 of Silo and the other one is going to be Dune Prophecy. For both of these I have not read the original material, so I can't speak to them in an adaptation level, and honestly I really liked both of them. It would depend on your mood. I think Silo season 2 is disconnected from the rest of the world in a way that makes it easier to watch right now, where I sort of struggled watching Dune Prophecy because I don't necessarily think it's like the right TV show for me for right now. But as far as how I feel several months down the road after watching them, I really like Dune Prophecy a lot, and I'm hard pressed to say that Silo is better than it. But the idea that I would say that Dune Prophecy is better when I enjoyed watching Silo season 2 so much more, just like incompatible with me. So I'm gonna say both of them are great. Number 13, favorite video you've made so far this year. I'm gonna cheat a little bit and say that all the Gothic reviews I've made so far this year have been my favorite. And there have been 4 of them. I think only 2 of them are available right now. One of them is in editing and the other one is waiting to post. There's You Let Me In by Camilla Bruce as a Gothic review. There's The Good House as a Gothic review. And I've also filmed videos for The Haunting in Room 904 and Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang from a Gothic perspective that you guys will probably be getting in the fall of this year. But as far as that goes, I love looking at books from a Gothic angle. I love reading Gothic books. I love the like little editing and film work I get to do. There's a lot that's really enjoyable about making those reviews. I feel like I'm contributing something from a specific angle that makes it more like valuable to you guys. I think artistically there's a lot of things I get to do with that sort of structure and play that I really enjoy because I like playing with the backgrounds here. I like wearing like little costumes and stuff. All of that just really makes them some of my favorite videos to create. Most beautiful book you bought or were gifted this year? I haven't bought any books, but I was gifted both Hungerstone and Siren Queen by my husband, and I think both these books have really beautiful covers. And then number 15, do you have anything you need to read this year? I did originally have a ton of reading plans, so there would have been like a bunch of books on this list, but I decided to let a lot of that go and pare it down. What I need to read this year still is The Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned. And both of those are rereads that I want to do specifically to be prepared for Interview with the Vampire Season 3 that's coming out in 2026, and hopefully to have like some videos related to those 2 books for you guys. Now that we know Interview with the Vampire isn't coming out until April, I think, of 2026, I have a little bit more time than I anticipated, which is great. But for me to actually use that time, I have to like kick my butt a little bit and get into gear with actually reading and taking the notes necessary for these. But yeah, that's all of my plans and all the things going on for me. But talk to me in those comments down below. How are your plans going so far this year? What are you really struggling with? What are you succeeding with? Share those things with me. And if you're this far into the video, the secret emoji is going to be a stack of books. And as always, keep reading.